we're talking about the podcast. Flying. What is it exactly, Vish? I forget the
Flying
exact.
why do they call it what is a flying coach? What is that? I don't get the reference.
Flying coach to me sounds like, like flying economy class, like an airplane reference.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. I got it. That's exactly what it is. Yep, got it.
But I don't understand how that relates to NFL. Yeah, I have no clue.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
They should have a different name, but okay.
Flying Coach podcast with Peter Schrager and Sean McVay. And before we start, can we mention McVay is incredible as a podcaster?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got a future.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like is he going to go like Gruden and kind of retire early and just get like $100 million deal like Rogan? Because it seems to me that what he's trying to do is the NFL version of Rogan. Look at all the people I know. Look at how I get them to talk at length, candidly. Who else can do that? Except for us. Check me out, 2:30 tomorrow.
Yes. Unknown 49ers top player.
No, but that's what McVay's trying to do. He's trying to do that Rogan thing.
You think so?
Yeah, because I think that's the future. You don't necessarily want to be like the guy on Monday Night Football. That's kind of getting played out. But to have the #1 NFL podcast, that's kind of fertile ground. Someone could have that. You know what I'm saying? Especially look at what Rogan just did with UFC.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the content of the podcast, Blake.
Yeah, so basically there was an episode recently, and they got Kyle Shanahan on. 49ers fans were just blowing up their email, leaving voicemails, basically harassing them to get Shanahan on here. And McVay and Shanahan are really good friends, so that made it all the better. And then Schrager's an awesome co-host too. So basically, they were getting into the details, and they started talking about the Stafford trade and how Stafford's on the Rams now. And Shanahan was in Cabo, and he was very frustrated, I guess you could say, with how fast this was moving. And basically, he said he started scouting him and called him very underrated and that he overlooked him. But he did see him in college at Georgia, and he was obviously amazing there, #1 pick. So bottom line is he called him underrated. Grant, what are your thoughts on this and just this whole topic of Stafford and Shanahan?
He called Matthew Stafford underrated. I don't know. When I was listening to him talk about Stafford, I was like, man, this is why I thought Vish was either John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan when Vish first started DMing me from a burner account. I was convinced that it was someone high up in the organization. I was like, it's either got to be Lynch or maybe Parag. It could be Kyle. I was so specific. And then I was wrong. It was just a 20-year-old kid from outside of Chicago who really knows his stuff, which is cool. But hearing Kyle go on and on about Stafford, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what Vish was telling me a year and a half ago. I can see the appreciation. I guess Vish and I were talking about it. The specific things he mentioned. It's not like, man, he's got a cannon. It was like, he's really good on play action. He knows where to go with the football. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff he looks for. So I do think that he's really nervous about the Rams. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So for me, my reaction, honestly, more than anything, people talked about I think the people's takeaway for the most part in reaction to this topic has been, oh, look, the Niners are interested in Stafford. Frankly, I don't care about that as much because what I felt was vindication. I felt vindicated that Kyle Shanahan shares my opinion on Matthew Stafford. And he talked about, you go through the specifics. He didn't just say, oh, he's a quarterback. He's like, oh, man, he knows where to go with the football. He's so good in drop back situations. He's so good within the pocket. He has every kind of throw, which is really hard for a guy with that big of an arm. He's great in play action. He went through all of these kinds of things to describe what makes him such a good quarterback, in his opinion. And he, frankly, I think the underrated term was him basically saying he's amongst all the top guys that everybody says is in the top guys that he's never put in that conversation. And so I was happy because, after me liking Justin Fields and the Niners clearly not really being in on Justin Fields, I was really questioning, do I know what I'm seeing here? Because I want to see the same thing Kyle sees. So I was ecstatic that he said those things about Stafford. And honestly, it for me, that was the most important thing. Listening to the two of them, especially because talk so candidly about a player. And I love that because Stafford is one of those players, just to further talk about the underrated aspect. I think he's one of those players that coaches and players look at Matthew Stafford as a big time quarterback, and fans and media look at Matthew Stafford as, oh, he's just a guy with a big arm who never won anything, never did this, never did that. And so it's interesting because, like, you look at Shanahan's comments and then you look at what Bruce Arians said earlier, saying that, Stafford is one of the few quarterbacks he would actually he goes out to the field just to watch him warm up because he loves how tough he is. He loves the way he throws the ball, and he talks about how special he is. I mean, it just felt good to hear those things because I'm a big Matthew Stafford fan. Not as much anymore on the Trey Lance bandwagon, but I'm still a big Matthew Stafford fan. And one last thing, just speaking of the Bruce Arians, and one thing that I think should make Niners fans a bit nervous about Stafford, I think the best comparison for what you can expect from Stafford's career from here on out is what Carson Palmer did in Arizona, especially Carson Palmer. Like, you throw in the ACL injury, but Carson Palmer had an MVP caliber season when he was in Arizona, and he had 2 years where he took them to the playoffs.
He was pretty good on the Raiders too.
ACL. Right. He was good. He was phenomenal on the Bengals too. It's unfortunate that he didn't win a playoff game on the Bengals. Why? It was another organization that provided him with less than surroundings.
Good point. Yep. Both guys have just gorgeous arms. Gorgeous. I
mean, Carson Palmer. Grant, I actually heard you and Jesse for a little bit yesterday talking about comps for Trey Lance. I tuned in right there, and you were talking about the comp for Justin Herbert. The comp for Justin Herbert for me is a more athletic Carson Palmer. It's that pure down the field thrower, 6'6" guy. But
I can see it.
Yeah. Honestly, I went through a bunch of random things there, but getting back to Shanahan and Stafford, it felt good for me as a Stafford fan, as someone who watches football a lot, takes it pretty seriously in terms of trying to watch and say the right things about it, that Shanahan felt the same way about this quarterback that I did.
He gushed about Matthew Stafford in ways he usually reserves for Kirk Cousins only. I was really impressed the way he talked about this guy. Man. Wow. What'd you think?
Mike?
Yeah, so I had a couple of things. My first one was he sounded really bummed out that he didn't get him. Like he described how just perfect he was, and then he realizes that one of his best friends, he might be his bestest of friends, but one of his best friends is going to have him who's just as good of an offensive mind as him, or at least very similar. So he sounded bummed out at that, but I was pretty interested in the whole storyline of, he didn't think it was going to go fast. He could kind of sleep on it, and then he gets a call and he's like, dude, you better call Stafford and get your guy. Otherwise he's going to McVay. I thought that aspect of it was funny because he was in, I want to say Cabo. So he was on vacation, and this was all going down. So that aspect of it, I kind of enjoyed because you don't really get to hear about that. You kind of just think, these coaches and other guys are just grinding nonstop. But the fact that he was kind of away from it all, and then, his best friend gets Stafford's pretty funny. And then the second part, you guys kind of touched on it with how he was describing him. I thought the most interesting part was, he just said he has a huge arm, but he also has great touch, and how there's a lot of guys in the NFL, you could say Drew Lock or Jamarcus Russell, any of the guys that have just cannons don't have touch, but Stafford has incredible touch, and that was just a rare blend of talent for his touch and arm. So I thought that was interesting. And then going against, my Packers going against him, I get to see Stafford a lot, and the Lions were never really that scary besides 2014 when they had that great defense. But Stafford was always someone you'd worry about because, I want to say he has the most fourth quarter comebacks over a certain stretch of time. And it's mainly because he's just great in the clutch. So, Niners should be.
So I'll add to that. He has 38 fourth quarter comebacks in the last 10 years, and 31 of them have come with game-winning drives.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Here's another stat. He's 41-14 when his defense allows less than 20 points or less in a game. He's 41-14 in his career. Over the last 2 seasons, the Rams have allowed 20 points or less in a game 18 times. They're going to be a good football team next year. But I did want to touch on one aspect of this because I wanted to get both your opinions on this, Grant. I know where you're coming from a little bit here, and I think you've touched on it, and I would like to drive it home a little bit more. And, Blake, I'd also like to hear your take on it. Raymond asks, was it genuine, though? Because they could have given up 2-3 first-round picks if they really, really wanted him. And, Grant, I feel like you've touched on this point where maybe Stafford also wanted LA.
Yeah, that was one of my takeaways. Like, it seemed like he was interested in the Niners, but maybe like a little bit on the fence about it. Like, I like the team. I don't know about moving to that area, that kind of stuff. I mean, his wife is kind of famous for her rants and stuff, and that's a factor, honestly. But also I think, like, how do people really look at the Niners? I mean, locally, and like among the Niner fans and stuff, there's a lot of optimism with this team, but from afar, you look at them and they're like, man, 4 winning seasons last, 18 years. They just were 6-10. They haven't had sustained success. Maybe he looks at them as like, yeah, that's a good landing spot. That's a solid landing spot, but the Rams are better. Maybe that's just the perception. Like, maybe he's like rushing fraternities and he went to the Niners fraternity. He was like, yeah, no, I like it. That's cool. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna hit you guys and come by tomorrow. And then the Rams give him the bid, and he's like, yes, I want to go. And that's just the way I see it. Seemed like maybe the perception around the league is that the Rams are a little bit further ahead of the Niners.
Blake?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, you look at what the Rams have done with Jared Goff, and I mean, I think we can all compare him to Jimmy G, but yeah, would you rather have – I mean, their offenses are pretty similar, right? But
and there's like a baseline there. Like, they're going to go at least 9 wins. Really, no matter what.
They've won 9 – I think with McVay, the worst record they've had is 9-7.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that defense, I mean, they have Donald, they have Ramsey. I'd say the Rams defense is probably going to be better than the Niners, although I'd say it's close. I think there is maybe – you'd have to be a little more optimistic if he went to the Niners and trusting that all the parts are going to fall into place like they did in 2019. Yeah. But with the Rams, you kind of know that there's at least a certain level of success that will be obtained with him there. And that has been obtained even with what we believe to be a lesser quarterback. And that offense is still – I mean, both offenses are comparable. I'd say both have a lot of talent. Yeah. Both defenses have a lot of talent. Well, I don't know. The Rams have just been better recently, and that's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting because I actually don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's as deep as much as I want to go to a better team. I think it's more that they're both really similar situations. But I think 2 things probably put the Rams over the top. Obviously, I'm speculating, but I'm also speculating based on facts that have been reported. I think the first thing is, Grant, you talked about the San Francisco area. I think he just preferred LA. And Jamal here said in the comment section, his boy Kershaw is in LA. So yeah. Right. So, and then
it caters to rich people. It's like, come to LA and feel rich. You know what I mean? It's the
right. By the way, Grant and Blake, did you guys know Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw went to high school together?
Did they
never been mentioned before?
My goodness.
Yeah,
in Dallas?
I don't know if that's true.
Oh, really? Grant, you've heard that before? I thought nobody's heard. No, I'm just kidding. But the second one is that if you remember when the trade first happened, and this is where, I mean, I don't want to call it tampering, but the upset part of me, even though I'm not really upset, I'm jokingly upset, says like, oh, it's tampering, is that McVay and Stafford actually had a prior relationship. Because do you guys remember Chad Hall? He was a small slot receiver that played for the Eagles for a little bit. Wore number 16. Yeah, he played for the Niners too.
Yes.
Well, his sister is married to Matthew Stafford. His sister, Kelly Stafford, she's Kelly Hall. She's Matthew Stafford's wife. And Chad Hall went to college with Sean McVay, and they're very good friends. So McVay and Stafford have a relationship from that. And so I think that also might have played a part. Like, McVay knew Stafford. He wanted to come get him. He studied him. He loved him. And they made it happen.
Well, we'll see how it goes.